Verse 8, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? The Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. And then verse 13. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain, everybody say for certain, that for 400 years, shout 400 years, your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But, somebody shout, but I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. Say great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sins of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. There ends the reading. May God bless it. Please be seated. Shout with me, if you will, real commitment. Shout it. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, we are in the third week of a series that we're calling The Journey. Essentially, we're exploring what does it look like to grow and to mature in our relationship with God. Or to put it another way, what does it look like to go deep in our relationship with God? And so we're going to start our focus this morning with chapter 15, but all of the reading that flows from chapter 12 all the way into the final chapters here of this story of Abram are all rooted in the first 4 verses of chapter 12. And I just want to take a moment there. I labeled that this morning for our reflection together as really under the label of invitation and promise. Everybody say invitation. Say promise. Last week I told you that when God said to Abram, I want you to leave your native land and your family and all of that and go to a place that I will show you, that God, who had already been involved in Abram's story, was now inviting Abram to get involved in God's story. It's a much bigger story. And that is the invitation that always comes to us when we face a commitment to line our lives up with God. It's really a transition from asking God to be in my story to becoming a part of God's story. And it is a step of faith that moves us in that direction. That's the invitation. And then there is the promise. Everybody shout promise. And you know this promise is go to a place I'll show you, and then all of the 6 I's in that 3 verses shaped around the word make. And I will make you a great nation. I will make your name great. I will make you a blessing. Now, listen. The first 2 I's, as we listen to it and look at it through the lens of our Western worldview, for most of us are amplified. I will make you a great nation. Everybody say great. I will make your name great. Everybody say great. The other part of it is kind of put on a low frequency. And I will make you a blessing. And all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Most of us, if we look at this, and even some of my colleagues that they have preached this message, highlight these first 2 from a kind of Western worldview. And here's how I'll describe it. That when they talk about those first, I'll make you a great nation. I'll make you your name great. We imagine ourselves as being in the middle of the world, and God bringing the wealth and the power and the influence and the fame of the world to us. We see ourselves in a position of being able to accumulate power and influence and wealth. Everybody say accumulate. Accumulate, gather it for ourselves. And so one of the distortions of faith is that God's job is to gather all of the wealth and all of the power and make me wealthy, make me powerful. Now, this is not an indictment against people who are influential, who are wealthy, who are powerful. Those are gifts of God. But notice the challenge here. I suggest It's about me. That's the wrong way to read this text. That is not what God is suggesting. The right way to read the text is to put that on a low note, put the high note with, I will make you a blessing. And that all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you. In other words, what God is saying, I'm going to gather you some influence and some wealth, all that, that's true, yes. But I'm giving it to you not for you to accumulate, but I'm giving it to you so that you can become an instrument, that it might pass through you, because I'm calling you in my story to be a blessing, a great blessing, and to make great impact. Because God invites us into a story, as I said last week, and that story unfolds within a broken world. And that story always moves towards a point of redemption. And so when he invites us into that story, he wants us to join him in helping to redeem history. So he calls us to be great blessings and to look to have great impact in his name. Now, that notion about all the families of the earth will be blessed through you, it really tracks its way 42 generations, according to Galatians 3, into and through the life of Jesus, whose death and resurrection offer the good news of the gospel to the whole world. But Jesus says this, highlights this point. In the Gospel of John 15:16, you did not choose me, but I chose you. I chose you to produce, the New Living Translation, lasting fruit. In other words, be a great blessing, and my word for lasting fruit is lasting impact. That's what he's trying to get us to do. To drive this home, as we get further in this message, I had breakfast with a group of guys yesterday, young men. Spent a couple hours with them, fabulous young men. And towards the end, I encouraged them to ask me any questions you want to ask me. It's not that I'll have the answers, but at least I can tell you I don't know. And so one of the young men say, I just want to know, Pastor, is it okay for me to pray for, dream of, and hope to become an NBA basketball star? So I was thinking about this text, and I actually told him, I said, I'm glad you asked you to help me with my sermon for the mark. I did. I said, wow. I said, listen, that's easy. I said, yes, and it's easy. It's easy. Well, notwithstanding that for every one NBA star, there's about 1,000 that are as good or more that never make it. Notwithstanding that point. But what I was suggesting is, it's easy for God to make you an NBA star. If that's what you want, if that's what you're aiming for, okay, but that's a low aim. Here's the question I want you to grapple with. Why do you want to be an NBA star? It's not what you want to become, it's why do you want to become. And I said to the young man, I said, if you are praying, God, I want you to make me an NBA star so that I can be positioned in the world, so that I can be a blessing to the world, and so that I can have an impact that transcends generations. Now that's a prayer you ought to pray. And by the way, leave the options open, because if that's the goal, God can get you there a lot of them ways. And then I told him about Magic Johnson. I said, a lot of these basketball players, you don't hear nothing about when the career is over. I said, but look at Magic, who's a Christian, who's a member of Church of God in Christ in Los Angeles, who recommitted his life to Christ after the whole AIDS, HIV thing when he had to retire and all that stuff. And then look at what happened. He has taken he's got some great records, but that's not how his life will be measured. Look at what he's doing in minority communities. He's building businesses and raising up jobs by the thousands. Look at what he's doing as he's raising the level of consciousness around HIV and AIDS. Look at what he's doing as he's sending young children who are trapped in poverty. He's helping them to break through and go to college and get their education. That's what it means, you see, to take the gifts that God has given you and to understand your life as one designed to be a great blessing and to have great impact that transcends generations. And by the way, you do not have to be wealthy in order to become a great blessing and to have lasting impact. Ask Mother Teresa lived her whole life in poverty, but she poured her life and her love out for those who did not have, and she became a part of God's eternal team to redeem history, and we're still talking about her today, and she had no wealth, y'all. You see the point I'm trying to get you to see? God calls us. All right, I'm in the text. Listen to the text. I read you a piece of it. Those of you doing your reading, you know the larger story. I told you that this journey that we're on is a journey that has a rhythm in it. And the rhythm moves us from faith to doubt, from doubt to stronger faith, from stronger faith to more doubt, from more doubt to stronger faith. As a matter of fact, it's impossible to go from one level of faith to the next level of faith without transacting through doubt. Anybody who's told you, I'm growing, but I've never had a doubt, don't believe them. Because either they're not growing or they're lying or in denial. We all deal with doubt as we come to the edge of what God has done and we look forward to stretching to another place. We got to get past doubt. And so we see that in Abram's life. He's accredited with righteousness in verse 6 because he expresses great faith. But by the time he gets to verse 8, he's saying, Lord, God says, I'm going to give you the land. He said, well, how do I know? Doubt again. But God is not angry with him because Abram is honest. And so I told you all last week that in order to navigate, you've got to be honest. That mature faith, and big trust comes out of the ability to have real dialogue in the midst of our doubts. And so one of our partners told me a few days ago, she said, boy, you really gave us some hard homework last weekend. Some of y'all remember the homework. I thought she was joking at first because I just said, remember, the first part of the homework was, pray for 3 minutes. And I think anybody can pray for 3 minutes. But then, I remember that she reminded me of the second part of the homework, which was, it's not just praying. It's really exposing to God those areas in your life where you don't trust him. And here was a woman who is seasoned in the faith. And she said, as I started getting honest with God, I discovered that there's some areas that I really don't trust him in. And she said, this impacts my work. How can I really worship him if I don't trust him? And worship is more than just singing, y'all. And so what she was really suggesting, how can I surrender my life fully to a God that I don't trust? Well, now she's ready to move to the next level, you see. That's where Abram is. It brings us, so we need big faith. Everybody say big faith. The ability to believe God for big things as we become a part of the redemptive strategy of history. And we need big trust. Say big trust. The ability to trust God when things fall apart, but trust his character. And say real commitment. Real commitment is what drives us forward. Now, this text is about real commitment. It gives us some values. Let me get into it with this story. There's a dialogue that takes place between a hen and a pig. The hen's coop is right next door to the hog pen. The farmer's house, back porch, is right in front of him. And it's the fact that the farmer is sitting on the porch eating breakfast triggers the dialogue. So the hen moves over to where the pig is. Cluck, 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 cluck. Starts a dialogue. She says to the hog, look at me. Look at my feathers, my beak. Look at me. Look how colorful I am. Look how clean I am. And then look at that fella. Look, do you see the smile on his face? He's eating my eggs. I produce them every morning. He comes and I move out the way. And he gets these golden eggs. And I'm the source of the smile on his face. But I look at you, Mr. Hog. give nothing. You make no contribution at all. All you do is take. I see him coming out here. He's giving you grain. He's giving you this. And you just eat yourself full and you wallow all in the mud. Look how muddy and dirty and nasty you are. How can you stand to be a hog? So the hog patiently decides to respond, onk. He says, So you see that plate? Yeah. So you focus on the eggs. See that bacon? Those ham sausage? Yeah. That's my brother. And in a few months, it will be me. So while you're excited about your offering, I'm being prepared to make a total sacrifice. That total sacrifice is the kind of what I call real commitment that positions us to be used in unexpected, surprising, extraordinary ways within ordinary life. As God invites us into his story to be great blessings and have great impact. See it here in the text. As a matter of fact, Jesus acknowledges himself. Watch it. He acknowledges that we have different levels of commitment. In John chapter 1, verse 39, he runs up on Andrew and his brother, and he simply says to them, come see. That's all. He didn't ask them to stop anything. He didn't put any burdens on them. He didn't say, you got to do this, you got to do it this way, you got to do that, you got to get here at this time. No. They didn't know who Jesus was, so he would say, come see. Come get close enough to figure out who I am. Come get close enough to sense my heart. Come get close enough to discover my grace and my power and discover that I use it redemptively and that I have you in the center. Come get close enough to discover how much I love you within the context of the word. Come get close. Come see. That was all. And for some of y'all who are just showing back up in church, I just want you to hear Jesus simply saying to you, come see. We're not trying to put any burdens on you. Some of you are not even Christians. You haven't even made a commitment. We're just happy that you came to see. And we want you to hear the Lord as he declares, he says, come unto me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. I'm not telling you a lot right now. I just want you to get to know me, Jesus says. Come see. But after 3 years, after they've been with him, after they know his heart, after they understand his mission, after they've said, I bought into it, after 3 years on the other side of the transfiguration, Jesus then says in Matthew 11, 28 and 29, he says, let anyone who will come after me, who will follow me, deny himself, pick up his or her cross and follow me. Total sacrifice. Jesus will meet you where you are, but his goal is to move you into a relationship of total abandonment. Then he can use you in ways that will blow your mind. Here's in the text. Here's the first point. I want you to underline what I call the value of real commitment. Everybody say value of real commitment. Shout it. It's right in the text. So Jesus says, so Abram says, how do I know? God says, okay, I'm going to create a covenant with you. So go get these animals and cut them in half, line them up, and I'm going to pass through this. This is the way we create covenants. You know I'm serious. All right. But then he begins to talk about the details of the journey. And he says something that is easily overlooked. He says, watch it. I am going to fulfill the promise that I made to you in chapter 12. You're going to be a great nation. Your name is going to be great. And I'm going to make you a blessing. And I'm going to position you for lasting impact across the generations. But it will not begin to emerge until after 400 years. Let me say it again just in case we missed it. I'm going to do everything I promised. But it will not happen until after 400 years, 4 centuries. And you thought you were waiting a long time. I mean, this slams right in the face of what many of us understand faith is supposed to be. Isn't faith supposed to be about getting close enough to God, believing God great enough and strong enough and powerful enough that you can believe to the point that God will be instantaneously? I mean, isn't it about believing him for a house and a car and a job and money and believing today and getting, is that what faith is about? And this text says, no. God takes his time. So here's the little deal. Write this right up under this point. See, I'm illuminated for you. Here's the point. Write it down. Real commitment will produce great things. But, everybody shout, but. Over time and not overnight. He says it's going to take 400 years. But at the end of 400 years, I'm going to bring you out with great possessions, great things. But it will take time, not overnight. Now, anybody who's been married, Rhonda and I, on August 2nd, will celebrate 29 years of being married. Praise God. And I've got a friend who's coming here at 12 from Boston who's celebrating here 50 years of marriage. And I got some folk here who's been married 45 and 50. As a matter of fact, if you've been married between 40 and 50 years, stand so we can celebrate you. Just stand. If you've been married, stand. There they are. Look at here. Look at here. Hallelujah. Beautiful. All right. Now, those of you who stood, you get this. That you can come out with great possessions, great things, but it takes time. You can have a great rich marriage with rich love, but it's not overnight. I was talking to them young men yesterday, and another one of them said, was trying to talk to me about his girlfriend and what was going on. I said, I know what's wrong with you. He said, what? I said, let me describe what you're feeling. He said, okay. I said, you can't eat, you can't sleep, and you writing songs. He said, how did you know? He said, I've already written 6 songs. This is the truth. I said, but young man, that's not love. It's the bud of love. It's the bud. They call it puppy love for a reason. It's not love. It's not. Anybody's been married 30, 40, 50 years. You know that's not love. So there's a reason why we say, in that stage, people, they sweet nothings. That's right. That's all it is, sweet nothing. All right, so we start off in that puppy stage, right? And then we get into that fantasy stage. Everybody you marry is a fantasy. It's not true. I'm serious. In the early stage of marriage, usually the first 8 days, you minimize the differences and you idealize the relationship. He's my knight in shining armor. But he ain't got no car. Come on. And then one day, y'all who stood up, you know this is true. One day, you break through the fantasy. You look at her without her makeup. Come on now. You deal with her in the morning. Come on now. You got to handle his laziness and having to clean up behind him. Come on. And then all that other disappointment and that hurt and all that stuff comes in as the real him or her steps out. And you wake up one day and say, what was I thinking? I was a fool. I call that the foolhardy stage. But if you have commitment, if you have real commitment, if you're able to stick it through, and you begin to understand it's going to take time, say time. It's going to feel like 4 centuries. You work on it. Let God work on you. You'll get into what I call the faithful mature stage.
And then you can stand up like these folks stood up. And then you've got real love. But it's produced. Anybody who raised children, you get this point. I was trying to prepare my sermon in Starbucks the other day. Was working and the lady came over with a cute little girl. The girl was, ooh. They're laughing and talking, having a good time. Blah, blah, blah. She's a little 5-year-old, real cute. I was looking at her, I was waving at her. She's so cute. And I said, so what's her name? She says, Loris. Oh, I said, oh, like Loris Lane. Yes. Looking for her Superman, of course. And all of that. And I made a little note in my margin. She's smiling now, but wait till 16. Y'all know it's true. You ever raised any kids? Come on now. They cute when they're babies. But let them get 13, 14, think they know everything. Come on now. Start talking back to you. You in your house, your money. Come on, everything they got, you bought it. They gonna talk back to you. Get my glasses, baby. Y'all got them? Lord have mercy. I done broke my glasses. Good God. Tilden, you wear glasses? Oh, my Lord. Anyway, I know y'all out there somewhere. But real commitment means you got to stay with it, work it through, right? And if they have any possibility of hope, it's your commitment. And sometimes it's not what you can do. All you can do is just pray. You got to be committed to pray. Is it working, baby? She's so sweet. That's after 29 years. Thank you, baby. It worked? All right. All right. All right, let me get to my second point. On the one hand, we're talking about the value of real commitment. It takes real commitment to push through the inordinate time of waiting. As a matter of fact, it's the waiting that helps to produce the commitment. And God is working to give us that commitment. Secondly, let's talk about the necessity of real commitment. Here it is. Watch it. It's bad enough it's going to take 400 years. But the text says, while they're in 400 years in a strange land where they feel strangers, that's Egypt, they will be oppressed, enslaved, mistreated, suffer. Here's the point. I talked about number 2 is the necessity of real commitment. Here's what you write up under it. Real commitment does lead to lasting impact. But, everybody say but. Only after a season of great suffering and sacrifice. That's just the reality. It comes after great suffering and great sacrifice. You know, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an NBA basketball player or an electrician or a plumber or a teacher, whatever, you pick it. And you want to be the kind of person that can in fact be a blessing to others and make lasting impact, it will come only after great suffering and sacrifice. Rick Warren says this: behind every great ministry is a great pain. I walked into my living room 2 days ago. I think it was Friday evening. Lauren and Elijah was in for Elijah's, my little nephew. I got 3 of them. We call them the little prophets. Zechariah, Malachi, and Elijah. So Elijah, the youngest, was there on the floor with Lauren playing the Wii. And they were up to some incredible level. He was smiling, and I walked in there and looked at him. He's keeping up with Lauren. Notice, keeping up with Lauren, because she's my daughter. She's always the best. Anyway, I looked at him. Here's why I was happy. Because about 6 months ago, Elijah was trying to play the same game. And they got a little rule that if you get out, you got to give it up. And he kept getting out, kept getting out, kept getting out. And when I heard him cutting up, and they fussing at him, give it up, give it up. No, no, they're fighting. I walk in there, what's wrong? Elijah won't give it up. No, no, no. Come here, Elijah. Elijah walking. What's going on? I keep losing. All right. And I stink. So, I said, why you say you stink? I stink. It's just like the kids in school, they tell me, because I can't do these things. I stink. I said, boy, straighten up. Straighten up. Now look at me. Look at me. I said, what you going to do about losing? I don't know. I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go in there, and you're going to keep working at it. And you're going to keep working at it. And when you lose, the cost for losing is giving it up. But if you keep working at it, keep working at it, keep working at it, you're going to get good one day. Come on. I'm going to say, you know why? Why? I said, because there's greatness in the making within you. I said, repeat it. Say, come on. Say, within me, there's greatness in the making. Greatness in the making. Come on. I said, when you go to school, you tell them fellas mess with you. Say, leave me alone. There's greatness in the making. Come on. And every time you lose a game, drop it and leave. Say, but there's greatness in the making. Come on now. And so when I walked in the other night, come on, and he's up there at that high level and there's a smile. I said, boy, what did I teach you? He said, there's greatness in the making. But it came through crying. It came through not making it. It came through failure. It came through but a will, a commitment that said, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to stay with it. So you got pregnant and got separated from God. All right, have the baby. Come back to Christ. Stay with it. So you lost your house, I understand. But Rudyard Kipling put it like this. If I could make one heap of all my winnings and risk it on one toss and turn and lose and start again at my beginning and never breathe a word about my loss, that's commitment, y'all. Start all over and trust God. Just don't quit the journey. In Iraq, I don't know, you've been watching the news. Talking about Christians being called into God's story. It's a story that moves towards redemption, and it's a story that unfolds within the brokenness and within the horrors of real life. That's the slavery thing going on in the text. It's unfolding. It's not that God makes the slavery. He predicts it because the story is going to unfold within the horrors of real life. And so I don't know what you've heard, but in the second largest city in Iraq, they announced over the speaker, passed out flyers. It's a city that a few years ago had over 1 million Christians in it, but now it's down to about 450,000, and they announced over the speaker, because ISIS, that group, has taken over, and they announced over the speaker that if you are Christian, you got to do one of three things. Come on. You got to either renounce your faith, you got to pay an astronomical fine that you can't afford. Come on. You got to leave the city, or we're going to kill you. Your pick. I'm talking about contemporary news. And you think you got problems? Come on. Your boyfriend didn't call you last night. You think you got problems? You've been unemployed, and I'm not minimizing. You've been unemployed for a while. I understand you think you got problems. Christians are streaming out. Others are being threatened to be killed. Because that's part of what it means to be a part of God's redemptive story. You're driven right into the heart of evil. Oh, God. Suffering and sacrifice is a part of what it means to become great blessings and lasting impactful. Here's the last point. Come on. The value of real commitment, we saw it. The necessity of real commitment, that's the only way you can endure the suffering and the pain without quitting. Let me give you one more insight about this. Watch this. Anyone who's been married knows this is to be true. There will come a time when you will lose faith that the marriage is going to work. But because you gave your word, you're committed, you stay on anyway. you also know this is true. There will come a time when you just don't trust him or trust her. It may be they cheated on you, or it just may be that they keep promising to give you X amount of time and they never do. And all kinds of responsibilities just falling on you. And you discover, I can't trust him. I can't trust her. But because you gave your word, you stay. Now here's what's extraordinarily insightful. I want you to get this. This is why God is trying to create commitment in us. Because there will come a time, just like with our people relationship, in our relationship with God, when our faith will run low. And we just can't be. I would imagine some of those Christians in Iraq, their faith is running low. Or there will come a time when you just feel like that partner that I told you about earlier, you just can't trust God because you expected him to move and to act in a certain way, and he did not. But you will not leave the journey because you gave your word. See, God builds commitment because he needs us to be committed. That's how he gets us through those tough periods of low faith and low trust. And positions us for his definition of greatness. Let's get to the third point. Here's the third point. Watch it. The third point is this. God says, when the 400 years is over, I'm going to punish the folk who enslaved you. In other words, I'm going to squeeze justice out of injustice. And then I'm going to bring you out with great possessions, great wealth. In other words, I will then position you out of your pain to be a blessing. Oh, y'all ain't listening. And a great impact to the nations. Come on now. But I'm going to do it by working you through the pain. And then I'll secure the trumpet, the triumphant victory. All right, so here it is. At the end of the day, while they were in slavery, they were still God's people, and God was in it with them, and they were a witness to the fact that God shows up in our slave moments. He shows up in our suffering moments. And then when he came out, their job was to let everybody know that the wealth they had, they didn't acquire. They came by way of a gift of God's grace, and that they were to use that to be a part of God's plan. Y'all listening to me? Some of y'all here, 10 years ago, you were in addictions. 10 years later, come on now, you're out. And the reason why you sing and praise is because God brought you out. Come on now. And you're celebrating his power. Some of y'all had bad marriages 5 years ago, and God turned it around, and you're sitting right next to somebody you wanted to kill then, but God brought you out. Come on now. Somebody's been divorced, but God has delivered you through that, and now you're living a new life. When you let God have his way, he'll meet you in your pain, bring you out, and make you a witness. And here's the last point. It then mirrors God's commitment to us. And he invites us to mirror it in our lives in the world. Here's the last thing. He makes that, he goes down through the smoky pipe. You know, I talked about it last week. Here's the point. At the end of the day, if you're sitting here, it is a celebration of God's commitment. As a matter of fact, this congregation after 100 years, after 100 days, is a celebration of God's commitment. Come on now. As a matter of fact, that's what most of the biblical text talks about. That's what most of the biblical text is talking about. When you read in Psalms 103, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me, and forget not his benefits, forgives me of my sins, heals my disease, redeems my life from the destruction. They just talking about God's commitment. Come on now. When you read, God declares that I will throw your sins into the sea of forgetfulness and remember it no more. God is just talking about his commitment to you. Come on now. When you hear all things work together for the good for those who love God and call according to it, that's just God's commitment being celebrated. When you hear that I'll make you more than a conqueror through Jesus who loves you, that's just God's commitment being celebrated. When you hear that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, that's God's commitment we're celebrating, not your self-actualizing. So come on now. When you hear he's able to do exceedingly abundantly more than you can ask or imagine, that's God's commitment you're celebrating.